Now I'm going to start talking about some of the tools that one of the tools that I'm going to give you to help you actually really do a good job and get those pieces of information that you really need to do your planning for implementation success assignment. And you're looking at that and you're going, okay, I'm looking at the rubric and I need to know who are key stakeholders and what's feasible and all that kind of stuff. And it can be a little overwhelming, but one of the things that I'm going to upload as part of the assignments this week for you to use as a tool, not for you to fill out and turn into me, but as a tool so that you can help you with this planning for implementation success assignment. It's called a Thinking Critically About Data worksheet. It's going to look like this, just to give you a sort of heads up. And what is so great about this is that it's a worksheet, right? And it's sort of helping you plot out your information, okay? And that's sort of what you're thinking about and what you're writing about in the paper. Now, previously, at the end of last class, you did a data collection tool. So that could be your pre-post test survey. That could be what data points you're going to collect from electronic medical records, those kinds of things. Are you going to look at outcomes before you do the intervention and knowledge and comfort levels with a pre-test, and then do an intervention and then look at post-test outcome and knowledge and comfort level post-test? Well, those are 3 different time zones that you're going to collect that data. Okay, so this is sort of helping you. And what it's looking at is what is your outcome. So what do you think you're going to find? And that's one of the reasons why I wanted you all to think about what percentage increase or change are you going to have. Is it pain levels are going to go down by a certain point? Is it that knowledge and comfort are going to go up by a certain point? And we're going to have better outcomes. Okay, those kinds of things that you had to think about before, you're going to apply and put here. So this is sort of your hypothesis, and what are the outcomes that you think will happen. So if this, then that, and some of you have several different outcomes, okay? Some of you might say, if we educate patients about this, we'll get better compliance. If we educate patients this way, we'll get higher customer service scores, okay? That's the first part where it says, what is the intended outcome of this program? Okay? And again, that's that way to sort of think about your hypothesis in a doable fashion. The second thing we're going to look at is what data is needed. And by that we mean is what are the indicators and methods, okay? So you're going to have to say, what are you measuring, how you're measuring it. So are you going to measure it in a survey? Are you going to measure customer service through electronic health records? Are you going to measure patient knowledge through a pre-post test survey? Are you going to measure whether something improves through observation? Those kinds of things you would fill in here. What data is needed? What are the indicators that you need to get that? How are you going to measure that? That's that operationalization concept that we talked about. Identifiers. List all the identifiers required to uniquely identify every response. Are you going to use and assign patients instead of their names? Are you going to assign numbers? Are you going to have just numbers to begin with? So that's kind of that way of thinking about it. How are you going to identify the data? And again, one of the things to keep in mind is we shouldn't be able to take that identifier and easily see a name. And you'll see that when we talk about databases later, there are no names. There are patient numbers. And usually those are generated patient numbers. They're not the actual patient numbers because, again, privacy, and we don't want that to happen. That's with electronic medical records. You assign a patient a number when they take a survey, or a participant a number, and then you track, this number tracks with this number, those kinds of things. So again, it's how are you identifying the people who are giving you the data, how are you identifying where the data is coming from. The second point is you need to talk about who's your point person. So who are you going to get this data from? Are you going to get the survey yourself and it's a validated survey? Are you going to get the electronic medical records and this person's going to, in this practice, is going to help you get that information? Do you get it through the hospital IT? We did that with patient portals. We just got IT to say which doctors, who's using the portal, based on specialty, right? All of that could come from IT. So again, that's how you're saying how I'm going to get this data and who's going to get it to me. So if you're going to have to get access to doing an in-service at a lunch, who's going to do that for you, okay? And one of the things that you're going to look at and how this really keyly comes back together with this is you want to look at the timeline. So you want to look at who, what, when, where, why, and how, and put a date on that. But you also have to identify any key stakeholders. And those key stakeholders on this form can transfer to this form, okay? So a lot of this can transfer to these things, and you can write clearly about them, but once you've thought about them and plotted them out, this is a worksheet so you can plot out stuff, okay? The next part is what data is available. So does the point person have access to that? So do you know if the person who is in IT can actually get you that data? Sometimes they can't, so you have to sort of rethink how you're going to get the data. And when is that available? Put that time, that date. Again, it'll help you come up with what we call that data collection sheet that you already have, but then adding dates to it. By this date, I will get access to this. By this date, I will get access to that. It keeps you on track too, but it also helps you see where you're at. Another things that we're going to talk about is, does the person need special equipment to get this data? Do they need to de-identify it to get to you? And again, you just say yes, no, and put dates by that. You're answering all these questions, right? One of the things that's sort of an afterthought too is, how am I going to use this and how often do I need to do this? So for those of you who are doing a pre-test and an intervention then a post-test, you would put, I'm going to do a pre-test, then I'm going to do the intervention and a post-test. For those of you who are only looking at one time, one shot, so do these people who use this thing have a one-shot difference? Those of you who are going to look at patient education and then it impacts customer service, you would say, I'm going to do the patient education, and depending on what your hypothesis is, I will get a better customer service response by this point. For those of you who are doing patient and family education, which a lot of you are doing, I'm going to do this intervention at this point, and at this point I expect BMI to change. Okay, so again, some of the stuff that you've done in part 2, where I made you put dates and how you're going to collect the data, who you're going to get it from, what are you going to use to do that, are things that easily can fit into here, and you can add dates to, and who, what is going to get this for you and how, and also reach out to them while you're filling this out and go, is that available? And then that merges with the first class and the second class and this into this project, which is a huge project, but it's not as huge as you think because you've done pre-work in the previous class at the very end with me, and you've done this. Okay, so those are things to keep in mind, and as always, you can reach out to me and talk to me. But that's sort of your first month's big project, and again, I will post this, Thinking Critically About Data, because you fill it out and you use it to help you write the project, but also to help keep you on track. Again, if you don't need any questions, or if anything seems a little obscure to you, and the video doesn't explain it, or you need more help, always reach out to me. Always shoot me an email. I am here to help you. This is a long process, but we are a team.